syndicates coming together are like-minded. They're working out of the same funds. The interests are fully aligned going forward, and it's made the next step possible. The point you're raising, though, with the markets, when we're trying to raise that next level of capital, which would cause a down round, even for a sophisticated investor group, where you're trying to do a phase 3 trial yourself, and you've got maybe 3 programs you want to develop, no one's going to give you the $150 million pre-money valuation you might think you deserve on that. And they're going to price one product, and it's going to be probably a down round. So we have been looking at what are the public instruments by which we could work with to raise a lot of money. So the SPACs have been attractive. These reverse public offerings have been attractive. All of these things have been attractive. We went down the road of a reverse public offering into two times we've done it, both very successful. We recently tried to do a SPAC with a company called Dynagen and a SPAC called Apex, and we had to pull out of it because the structural investors that are in the SPACs just deal in the market on an arbitrage level that we're not even close to understanding how to, meaning venture guys aren't even close to understanding how to do. So we had to back out of that, and we're now back basically at square one trying to figure out how we're going to finance 4 phase 2 programs in irritable bowel and the whole associated GI area. So the markets have affected those later stage opportunities. I don't think they've affected the earlier stage ones.
Yeah, I think on the SPAC area, there's been more than 70 that are on the tarmac that have been trying to go out, and I think a number of them have been pulling back. So I think not only because of the market, but because of the difficulty of finding the kind of businesses that the people have to vote on in order for the money to get applied. So I mean, that's one area, along with the way the market conditions have been. When you're looking from the VC side, I guess, it's not so much necessarily what's happening in the immediate present, but you're looking at how long it's going to take for that money to get monetized and where you're going. And that, maybe this is a good segue to start getting into the valuation issues, but it really comes down to how long are the VC's money or the investor's money going to be at risk before they can get their money back, which helps determine what the valuations will be. And Kathy, maybe you could talk a little bit about valuation metrics and what you look for in determining value for companies.
Okay. Well, we are early stage investors. We typically invest in Series A, and I'm sure that entrepreneurs would love for us to say there is a formula and here's your formula, but it just isn't, it isn't that easy. Valuing an early stage company is a little bit of an art and a science. I will say that, you know, on the earlier end of the early stage deals that we do, and that is, you know, kind of sub $5 million in revenues and below, for the most part, those valuations are in the single digits. Now, exceptions to that would be in situations where the entrepreneur, the founder, has a great track record and has a track record of making lots of money for shareholders in the past. Then they can command a premium and usually will get a premium going in. But you know, the thing about us is we want to know how we're going to get out of an investment before we even decide whether we want to get in. So part of our exercise is looking at the time frame that we think it's going to take for you to create a liquidity event in your company. I think we all know that's not as short as we thought it was. We have a 2000 fund, and we still have 18 companies in that fund. So, you know, we're 8 years plus counting. So that determines, a lot of the time that determines how much we will be willing to pay going in, because we want a certain percentage of the company. We're targeting 20 to 40%, and so that's sometimes how the math works. As the companies mature, then it becomes more metrics, and it can be either a revenue multiple or an EBITDA multiple. We had a device company go public now mid-06, almost 2 years ago, and it was really treated as another round of private capital. It was an alternative to that. So we had a little bit of step up in valuation, but we basically took the company public to just get credibility and get some visibility, which that certainly happened as they've continued in their trials. But I think, you know, the early stage market, it's tough. We're looking at your opportunity versus probably, 8 to 10 others at any given time, and trying to figure out where we can make the biggest return at the end of the day. And that's the way we usually look at that, as a multiple of the cash that we invest.
Going to Rhys for a moment, because usually, Rhys, you'll see things before Art or Kathy will, and valuation is very critical, particularly at the early stages, because it can be a turnoff to the institutional people coming in where they see there's lots of people in there at an unrealistic valuation, and they know they're going to end up having to get crushed a bit. So maybe you could talk about that and how carefully your group looks at value so that you can see for the later rounds, which are necessary clearly in most life science companies, the valuations are stepped up properly.
Yes, we look very carefully, that's right, Les, we look very carefully at the cap plan and look, have they thought through realistically how much capital they're going to need to get through the different phases of their product development and their market penetration. And many teams we see just don't have that sophistication, and that's okay. That's not what they do. They're often technologists, or they have other skill sets, but they're not financial planners, and they're not necessarily, strategic financiers. So that's part of the value we like to add. And it's interesting when, how much capital, what the entrepreneur thinks they need versus what we think they really are realistically going to need. And to blow through a milestone or to adjust a milestone and have a little bit of reserve, there's often that's part of the negotiation. No, you don't need $500,000 at a $10 million pre-money. You realistically need $2 million at a much lower valuation. And just part of that is the education process that we have to keep valuations low so that our phone calls get returned by the VCs when it's time, or your phone calls get returned when it's time to do those bigger rounds. That's extremely important. We're fortunate in that often we are the first institutional round. We consider ourselves institutions anyway, but we're the first in, and so we don't have the problem so often of downward pricing. We have some flexibility, and it is pure comps for us, comparables. Just as you know what your home is worth more or less on your street when you look left and right. Our members, in addition to full-time VCs and retired VCs and former finance people from Wall Street, I'm looking at a couple of our members in the audience here, we see a lot of deals and we see a lot of valuation processes, and so we feel we're pretty good at eyeballing it. And do we get it always right? Well, that's in the eye of the beholder. But it is all about comparables, what deals we've seen recently or what deals we felt were done too rich, et cetera. So I hope I answered the question.
We're in this mating dance because that's in effect what's going on between the entrepreneur or the company that's going to be looking for later stages of financing. I mean, when in that process you recommend that valuation be brought up? Should it be the first thing that comes out, in the first meeting, or do you work your way around towards it? Maybe Steve, you might want to chip in on this one.
I wait, actually. I guess, and I probably want to step back from a lot of what's talked about is after the fact, and I think I can share some valuable information with people that are thinking about raising money for an early stage company, because that's where my experience is, and I think there's some points that are worth talking about and that have been mentioned but are worth going over again. On a macro level, the two biggest points or advice I would give is, one, know your investor, and two, know your market. So by way of example, know your market along the lines of what Kathy said. So I founded the most recent company that I've been working on. It's called Passport MD. For the last 3.5 years, we've been building that company. I've defined that company by the markets I feel it fits best in, and the markets that will define its potential. So that's a consumer-directed healthcare company, which is a market that's growing rapidly today. It's a healthcare services IT company, which is another market that's growing rapidly today. It's a concierge medicine company, and these aren't fables. This is truly what it is, and it fits in there. But it's you as the founder, or you as the one who's raising money, it's your job to pull that definition out and present it to the investor so they understand how you've positioned your company. I think if you position it in a manner that, and with